Welcome, everyone. It's December 17th. Welcome to Making Waves, the ShipRocked podcast. My name is Justin.
And I'm Chad.
And welcome, everyone. Tonight's a very special edition of ShipRocked, a little abbreviated, but we are stoked and very honored to have tonight our guest, David Ellefson from Megadeth and his own project, Ellefson, and Altitude and Attitudes, just all kinds of stuff going on. Dave, welcome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, John.
Seriously.
Good to be back aboard the cruise one more time.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Really quick to begin with, prolific would be a good word to use to define you. You've got so much going on right now. Obviously, the No Cover album you just recently put out and toured, which is interesting. We definitely want to hear about this tour during such an interesting time in our lives. You've got that going on. Obviously, the thing now is you've got the book with the Rockstar Hitmen. Going on. Obviously, you've got the Ellefson Films thing happening for you. You've got EMP record label, the coffee company. I mean, you've got so much going on, Dave. Where do you find the time?
See, I got the inside scoop that COVID was coming, 5 years ago. So I figured they gave me 5-year warning. Get your act together. You're
Martin McFly over here.
Off. Yeah. So, insider trading. I bought some Pfizer stock and everything. I'm good to go. But yeah, it's it's funny, as I tell the story, 2002 Megadeth had disbanded for a season, and it's that fearful, frightening moments where I was in my late 30s, had a young family. Kind of the most expensive part of your life, when you're doing in that phase. And the insanity that my entire life was funded and based on a rock band. And as big as we were and as popular as we were, and we had a big career and everything, when that comes to an end, it's sort of like planes have a glide. Helicopters land very quickly, right? They land like a brick. And when rock bands stop, they land like a brick. They fall out of the sky quick, and most don't survive. And so I quickly I called everybody I knew, my friends at Roadrunner Records and managers and everybody in the world, and like, oh my God, like the day has come. And that was a moment that I don't ever want to experience that ever again. And it was my own doing, because I had all my eggs in one basket. And so since then, so the last 20 years, I've expanded. I ran artist relations for PV Electronics. Some new bands came together during that decade of the 2000s, so I kind of learned how younger artists were playing. And of course, you've invited me to be on ShipRocked a bunch of times, so that's always kind of kept me in touch with younger artists, different genres outside of thrash metal and things that I'm kind of known for. And, so when I came back to Megadeth in 2010, I came back a very different guy, more seasoned, kind of way more on my own 2 feet. And I think I came back in a position of strength for that. And as you've seen, I've managed some groups. We had Dalskin on the cruise. Yeah. Like that. And that's actually in 2015, that's where the label started, was, maybe some of the listeners, I don't get hired by labels to go produce things. I find artists that I find compelling, that I like, and I take them in the studio and I sort of do it on my own dime, and I spec them. And then once you're done recording and you're all excited, you're like, yay. And then you come up out of the rabbit hole and you go, oh, shoot, now I got to go around the industry with my tin cup out begging for a record deal, Right. And so I hate that. And so when we started the record label, EMP Label Group, which is just an acronym for Ellefson Music Production, when we did that, I designed it so that I'd have a home for the places and the things that I produced to go. And then we just started signing all of a sudden people came out of the woodwork, with other things that they had that they wanted to, Mark Slaughter, Doyle, people had other records they wanted to put out, so we started putting them out for them.
Yeah, one of the really impressive things that, just real quick with the label, is when you the big news obviously is when Combat came in as an imprint with you guys, and just obviously your first record as Megadeth was out to them, and it's just a classic 80s thrash, hardcore, iconic. And to have them, to see it come to a home of someone who was really part of the origin of that it was just a really welcome relief to see someone is in good hands, this iconic labels in great hands.
Yeah, it's funny because excuse me, I'm coughing here. I've been talking a lot, doing a lot of press. This book and this album. Yeah. I realize playing music is the smallest thing I do. I talk more than I play nowadays. But it's funny, Tom Hazard, who's been my partner with Coffee Company and the record label and stuff, and he had put together labels before, so he helped me do that. One day he calls me and he says, "Hey, I think we can acquire and relaunch Combat Records." And you got to realize, me and Dave Mustaine, we did not have the best relationship with Combat Records back in the day.
Sure.
We were. I always say Combat is the house that Megadeth built. Once we put out "Killing Is My Business," we got, I think, $8,000. Had no money.
Wow.
Support. Yeah, $8,000.
Oh,
and studios in LA are expensive. Rooms at $1,200 a day, and
yeah,
that money goes quick, right? So 1 week into it, we spent the money. So we're out on the road. Megadeth Exciter. Canadian band, also on Combat. Me and Dave called the label and said, "Look, we are broke as broke. In fact, there's some fans, some girls who were kind enough to go to the store and buy us a hibachi and some hamburgers and beer. And we're sitting in a Motel 6 in Kansas City, and we are broke. Can you send us some money?" And they told us, "You guys need to go home and get jobs." We're like, "What?" And that,
wow.
There's these moments in rock and roll. And I always say the best rock and roll is when you've got something to fight against and, someone to fight at. And that was one of those defining moments. Of course, Dave coming out of Metallica, that was one for him.
Yeah.
Here we are with Megadeth, fighting with our record label, going, screw those guys. And, we just sucked it up. And, my dad gave me a credit card when I left Minnesota. That I think only had, like a $750 credit limit on it. So somehow we put $5,000 worth of stuff on that credit card. And that basically funded the Killing Is My Business tour. And then I had to drive home and explain to my dad why the credit card bill was so high. And like, can you help us out? You never ask up front because the answer is no. So it's better to beg forgiveness, right, than ask permission.
It's funny to hear that story and the small $8,000, and you realize what that album means to thrash and speed metal and everything. It's like the Black Sabbath debut kind of story.
It is. It's funny. I've been telling Dave that because I do a lot of these, so I'm kind of in touch with sort of the groundswell with the fans, and I people say that. I keep saying, it's funny, Dave. That has become like this cult, this sleeper cult classic, that people want to hear songs from all the time. And
Sure.
Me and Dave are like, what? That album? Are you kidding me? Look, the Apple iPhone commercial last year was Last Rites Love to Death. Song 1, side A, album 1. So somebody inside of Apple was obviously a deep cuts fan.
Absolutely. That age range now is the one making decisions at a corporate level.
Yeah, the money we made off that iPhone commercial more than paid for the album and the tour.
I'm paying you back, Dad. I'm paying you back.
Me and Dave were finally able to get whole on that tour. Yeah, exactly. Finally paid my dad back for that.
Speaking of records, let's just talk about the Ellefson no cover record. This thing is, we were just, before you got on, we were talking about this thing and how my favorite part about it is that it's such a deep cut record. It's not what you'd expect, the obvious, because hearing Down by Cheap Trick, mind blowing. Fantastic.
And Chip's Enough brought that into us. Tom hit him and asked him, said, "Hey, why don't you bring it in?" And Chip can be a one-man Cheap Trick band in and of himself, So, but yeah, it's so funny. Before I got on the call, a friend of mine today, I happened to run into him. He says, "Man," he goes, "I know, so you covered, Wasted on No Cover," and he said, "Man, have you ever seen that Def Leppard, The Early Years, I think it's called?" So I went on iTunes and I actually just downloaded it. And oh my God, that's the Def Leppard I know. Pete Willis,
sure,
whose guitar is bigger than him, and he's just got this, he's just such a killer lead player, and just their look, I forget how Tom Peterson from Cheap Trick and Rick Savage from Def Leppard are a couple of the really influential bass players for me. And not from chops and licks, but they just freaking look cool. They look like rock stars. You know, they got great hair. They sing cool. They stand cool. They play cool basses. I mean, that's part of it, you know, because, you know, these songs in this record for me, I mean, these are things like Sweet and BTO and Kiss. I mean, I was like 10, 11, 12 years old when I heard these things, and they changed my life. And I was already a musician. I played piano and I played saxophone in a little, you know, orchestra band. But when I saw these guys and I saw their albums and I would see them on Don Kirshner's rock concerts and, you know, Midnight Special, Wolfman Jack. Yeah. I mean, the bass made me want to be a rock star, you know, and that's what I think these songs on this record represent for me.
I mean, you have some amazing players. Real quick, I'm just going to mention something that's tied into ShipRocked. So one of your singers, Jason McMaster. Jason's a long time guy. Jason's voice was the first voice that was ever heard on a ShipRocked cruise when Broken Teeth were the first band to basically launch us on our first sailing. And the first words, and I hope this doesn't offend anyone, he goes, and there's a lot of there's a half ship, so a lot of blue hairs on it. They go, hey, welcome to ShipRocked, motherfuckers. And then they kick in. I'm thinking, oh my God. So to see Jason leading off the album with you guys on this, I was like, wow, what a tie-in. So, but it's great. I know Chad has some things to talk to you about on this record.
I mean, it's great. It's like Justin said, is amazing. And one of the things I was really interested about finding out is whose idea was the Post Malone cover. It's incredible. And it was a really nice piece inside of that.
You know, it's funny. That was actually Tom Hazard's idea. He hit me one day a couple years ago. I was here in Scottsdale and I'm driving, not even that long ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And he goes, hey, have you heard of this guy Post Malone? And I was like, I think so. I think maybe my daughter listens to him or something. And he says, dude, he's got more songs in the top 10 than like the Beatles. And he said, plus he's got a Megadeth tattoo on his elbow. I'm like, no way. And he goes, dude, let's hit him on Twitter. So we sent him a message off my Twitter, and he hit right back. He goes, oh my God, how are you? Big fan, da, da, da. So we started this sort of, you know, bromance, you know, fanboyism between the two of us. And then we got to know him, got to know his dad. And when me and Frank Bello were on tour, actually we just played ShipRocked, and then we went right over to tour with Slash last year, 2019. I stayed behind in Stockholm to go see Post, and we hung out. And I was backstage with him, and he's doing beer pong. He is the beer pong champion, you know. And it was funny. I guess it was late last year. So fast forward a few months. Me and Tom are on tour supporting. We'd put out our first Ellefson solo record, Sleeping Giants, and we're driving around, I think Italy or Switzerland or something on this tour. And he goes, hey. He was kind of sheepish. He goes, hey, what do you think about maybe doing a Post Malone cover? You know, and I knew he was a big fan. You know, I said, you know, actually, that's a pretty cool idea. And the reason I liked it, aside from I really do like Post's sound, I think he's just got an incredible sound, is there was a band, and you guys may even know who this was, like when a Taylor Swift record came out, a big one, and some young band who probably would have played ShipRocked came out and covered it like that same week or something.
I Prevail. Yeah.
Was that who it was? It was I Prevail. And I was like,
from here in Detroit. Yeah.
I was like, that is a great idea to cover an immediately successful song. And so when Tom brought it up, I thought, you know what? I like that idea. That's funny that it's I Prevail. I did not know that. And so I thought, you know, that's pretty cool to take a current song and keep it current, but bring it over to a metal audience who probably doesn't know Post Malone at all and probably doesn't buy his records.
Sure.
So unlike No Cover, which is maybe more typical where we dig back into our childhood record collection and we, like Sabbath, Sex Pistols, we bring these songs forward into current day. Over Now is taking a current artist, like a really current artist, and basically Michael Jackson of the modern day, and just bringing him right over into heavy metal. And I thought it was a pretty clever, you know, idea and timing. And, you know, it's funny, you know, we told Post, we said, hey, listen, you know, we can be your metal backing band if you wanted to make it on metal. Just let us know. We're plug and play.
Was he stoked? He's like, really?
I mean, the thing that Yeah, I mean, Post is a huge metalhead, so to be on, you have his song on your record, and then had done the Ozzy album last year. I mean, he's already minted now at this
Yeah,
point.
it was actually good timing, wasn't it? And what's nice is Tommy Lee was a co-writer on that track on Over Now.
Jeez Louise.
And it's funny, this last year as everything shut down, my Ellefson solo band, we were already scheduled to go to Australia and Japan with Chris Poland, who's a former Megadeth guitar player. And so we'd already planned on releasing our first, or another original tune called Simple Truth, which we put out in April. And then the next plan was to drop the Post Malone song in May. So we just stayed the course with it, even though things were shut down and the tour's been pushed back, till 2021. We said, what, screw it. People need music. They're done, they're mastered, they're ready to go, and let's just drop them, put them out.
So we had Bumblefoot on last week with us, and he told us about the tour.
Yeah, what did he say?
He said it was great. It felt good to go out and play live, but he said it was super interesting with the crowd setup.
Yeah. Well,
what are your thoughts on that?
He had his Ellefson mask on the whole time.
Yes, and he was wearing that.
Well, and it's funny because he and I talked about it. Because I asked him, I said, "You masking up?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, and I think it sends a good message. And I said, absolutely. I said that as much as anything, because here we are. We had these dates booked for a couple months. We went to Texas and Louisiana with Saliva. We did these sort of pop-up outdoor festivals, and that was pretty comfortable because it's outdoor. Trickier one was then a week later we go through the Midwest, and I mean we're playing Chicago the night the governor is shutting down the state of Illinois. So we made a conscious decision. It's like normally you'd be all over your Instagram or whatever. Hey, come and see us tonight. All of a sudden we're like dark, like don't come out. Don't come to the show, anti-promoting, and
nothing to see here.
Don't pay no attention to the band on the stage.
I figured maybe you guys would have got grandfathered in for that one show.
Look, we did it, and it's funny because the place was packed. I mean, there were so many people, and funny, they all masked up. The next night in Green Bay, pretty full house, no masks. I mean, you're like, you guys do watch the news, right?
That's very Green Bay, though, right?
Yeah, we masked up. We're masking up, and we're keeping our distance at the merch booth. So, we followed like I said, it's the one moment in history when rock and roll has to play by the rules too,
Yeah.
And we did. But we got home, everybody got tested, nobody got sick, thank goodness. And I didn't hear of anybody else in these, from the shows getting sick either. So I think it was one of those, thank you, Lord, we appreciate letting us go do that.
Yeah, but definitely one of a handful of bands that went out and did it. So, that's going to definitely be remembered for you guys.
Yeah.
So the book,
what
you've been itching to write this for a long time, or has been sitting in your mind? Can you please explain this book to some folks?
Well, it's fun. The cover, our guy Sledge, is actually Vinny Dombowski from Sponge. That's it.
Another Detroit dude.
Yes, he actually was kind enough to lend us an image of him that we could create into our character. And
so cool.
And Vin and I and Mike Heller from Fear Factory, and Drew, my co-writer here, who has played guitar and banged tango for a second or two. They had started writing some tunes and, pulled me into it. And we kind of have a bit of a soundtrack for this book, for the book series. Now, it's the Sledge Chronicles, so it's a series of books, and this is the first one.
Okay.
And, I've always wanted to write fiction, to answer your question. The story came to me literally a year ago. I was in South America, in Brazil, on a solo tour. And a friend of mine called me up. He said, "Where are you at?" I said, "I'm down in Brazil." And he goes, we all think you're this rock star, but I'm kind of wondering if you don't work for the CIA and you've got out doing hits and taking people out, and, being Jason Bourne on the side, And I said, "Dude, that's a freaking great idea for a book." And that was it. And I mean, it came to me, and I'll never forget the moment. I'm like, "Dude, thank you." And that's why I had to thank him in the book, He doesn't get any royalties, but I thanked him.
Would you mind telling people the premise
Sure.
of the story?
So the book's called Rockstar Hitman, and for the story I just said there, You can be somewhat autobiographical in ways with fiction, and I liken it to like John Grisham was a lawyer and then became an author, and man, his stories all have sort of a legalese sort of law background. Well, these have a rock and roll background in a similar sense. Drew and I both, obviously have experience as rock and rollers, not so much experience as hitmen, fortunately. So that's where the fiction comes in, of course. And all Nate's, names and places have been changed to protect the guilty, I guess. But it starts a little bit autobiographical. Kid like me, small town, stars in his eyes, wants to go be a rock star, and gets sort of, scooped up by an agency out in Los Angeles. Quick here, sign your record deal. You're off to the big time. So of course signs it without reading it. And there's a sub paragraph, as every contract is, including that Combat Records contract and all the ones that
Yeah.
Wait a minute, only $8,000? Wait, really? I didn't read that. Read your contract. So he signs a contract, and sub paragraph 34B says, oh, by the way, part of this is you work for the agency, right? And we've got some other work that you're going to be doing while you're traveling the world. Like, we're going to make you a star. You're going to get to live your dream, but you're going to have a day job while you're out there. So it's interesting. His world touring becomes a platform for the agency to go snuff out some bad guys. And so it's interesting because at first he's doing this dirty work, and he's kind of, feeling kind of crappy about it. And then he realizes the guys he's snuffing are like, they're bad guys. So he's kind of like, should I feel good about killing these bad guys? Maybe this is a good thing. You know what I mean? And sort of, so it's kind of, we drew the parallel of selling your soul and having to go do this dirty work to the parallels of selling your soul in rock and roll, where you're away from home, you've signed this agreement, you've taken the money, now you got to pay back the advance, you're away from your family and friends, you can't keep a girlfriend, all of the sort of life stories. So we really tried to parallel and it's somewhat humorous. Our character Sledge there's funny moments in it, and so I'm already well into book 2, so which is the next tour. So we've got a chronological series going on.
I love the idea that you guys are routing a tour behind who you have to assassinate.
Yes.
It's genius, man. Like if you don't end up pitching this like a Showtime, I saw the visuals being on that side as well.
Yeah.
It's like, oh wow.
Well, it's interesting because Drew
perfect.
also, he came to me and Tom about this film that he has called Dwellers, which is kind of in the sort of found footage Blair Witch genre, and it's gonna roll out at the Mad Monster HorrorCon in Charlotte, North Carolina, on February 20th. We're going to premiere it there. So, Drew's got a twisted, demented, sick little mind. And so when he brought that film to us, I'm like, dude, that is a cool idea. And so when I started writing this, I started lining the characters and the storyline out, and I'm pretty good at that, the developing that. And then all of a sudden I said, hey man, here's the idea. And he wrote back to me, there's a sample chapter that we just pushed out. I think that some of the news sites picked up today. And that was the first thing Drew sent me. And I just went, dude, that is freaking awesome, man. I mean, that is exactly the twisted, sick mind. And so we really, just like when you're in a band and you collaborate, you become one voice. I feel like Drew and I have that as authors and as writers of this narrative, this story of the rock star hitman. We become one voice. Like, you never know who wrote what,
Yeah, that's so bitching.
I grew up a Kiss fan. I didn't care if Gene or Paul wrote it. To me, it was all Kiss, And so I think a book needs to be the same way, especially when it's collaborating. I think Drew and I really found a sweet spot there.
Well, you're definitely no stranger to writing. Obviously, you have the 2 autobiographies, My Life with Death and More Life with Death. So, yeah, this kind of it's time to move on to like some other narrative, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm tired of telling my story.
Yeah, but I'm sure there's a third in there somewhere coming up soon.
Well, it's my life after death. I guess after I retire,
That's
the band breaks.
Perfect.
My Life with Death, More Life with Death, My Life After Death.
Perfect.
Yeah, the trilogy, the Death trilogy. But yeah, it's great to do that, because one of the things that's with I think when you're writing your own memoir and you're writing a nonfiction like that, look, believe me, I've lived this life, again, not the hitman part, but killing is my business tour. I guess that would fall kind of under
All
that.
kind of ties in, Dave.
Kind of ties in. This really is the killing is my business tour right here. That really is it. But live the, and of course, when you're writing these books, there's some things, that you go, okay, I can't tell that story. Like someone's going to go to jail, or my wife will hate me, my kids will disown. Like I just, some things even in rock and roll with memoirs are just off limits. But I do find that when you're writing fiction, hey, the sky's the limit. You can really go there, and even maybe in a story like this, because again, I've sort of lived the rock and roll life. You can sort of borrow from little components of maybe even a life that I've lived or I've seen other people live. So I think the potential where you take the story is almost limitless, and I love that about fiction. And I read a lot of fiction. I used to just buy a lot of records and listen to records, and then I formed a band, and now I read a lot of books. I buy books, and I became an author. So it's sort of the same path.
I got a question for you, just out of pure curiosity. As far as fiction authors go, or authors in general, if you had only 1 hour to sit down with one author in the whole entire, living or dead, to talk about either their books or their lives, who would it be?
I would say I would probably sit down with Lee Child, who writes the Jack Reacher stories.
Okay.
Because, he's got this sort of international reach. I'm told I think I've read he likes to be a little under the influence when he writes, which, is like I used to be when I used to write songs years ago,
sure.
Mr. Brownstone, whatever that may be, but because I like I like the character, I like his stories, I like that, it's this, there's a likability to his character, the Jack Reacher guy. And of course, since Tom Cruise played him, I think now, at least as probably Americans, we have sort of an American actor as a face. We sort of put an identity to it. So it's funny, like you were saying, like even with this, with our book being some type of a screenplay movie, as soon as you put a character to it, I think now there becomes a relatability,
Yeah.
But I picked that up from Lee Child's writing right away. There's a likability, yet a badass, always wins. And I like his style of how he writes.
That's a good one. It's like a regular Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, we just have you for a few more minutes, so we'd definitely like to ask you a question now that we're in the Christmas season. Is Christmas, what does Christmas mean to you, if you don't mind us asking?
You know what? I come back to the whole point of it is we're celebrating the birth of Jesus. Whether you believe that or not, whether that's what you celebrate, that is why we celebrate it. I mean, it was important enough that we actually changed the calendar from BC to AD, right? I mean, again, regardless of your religious beliefs or not, and whether you think that story is, again, maybe that's a piece of fiction, I don't know. But, none of us were there, so we don't know. But that is the purpose of it. And it's funny, a fan hit me on Cameo yesterday, and they were kind of bumming out and stressing. And it just came to me. It was like, hey, remember, that's what this isn't about. I got to buy a bunch of presents. People say, oh, it's all about family. Well, it's not really. It's a birthday party for a dude. Jesus Cristo, right? That's the guy.
It's a birthday party for a dude.
Right? I mean, that's the guy.
That's what they should say on the calendar right there.
Yeah, right.
A birthday party for a dude.
That's a t-shirt. That's a t-shirt.
Night before birthday party for a dude.
So, to me, it's like, hey, take the stress off. You know what I mean? If you don't have the money, put the credit card away. This year we can't have people over. No problem. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a party for a dude. Like, that's what we're doing. So
he's got the whole world in his hands. He's fine.
I mean, look, I grew up a Lutheran kid, so I grew up a Christian guy, and I was thinking, like, if the Christians are so big on honesty, why did they lie to us about the Easter Bunny and Santa? That's like a real heartbreak when you find out that those aren't real, you know? And of course, I had to do it with my own kids. You know, my wife and one day were like, should we really start this lie? Because then we're going to break their heart at 10. Hey, by the way, there is no Santa, you know? And of course, there's a whole story to St. Nicholas and, you know, the history of that, which
Sure
has, you know, kind of gotten commercialized, you know? But
yeah, sell them on Krampus.
Yes, I mean, you know, it's so anyway. To me, that's what it is, and for me, quite honestly, I think it takes a lot of the pressure off, and it's just sort of kick back, enjoy the day. If you're religious, celebrate that. If you're not, don't sweat it, and you know, it's kind of go with that. Is my thought on it.
Yeah, hey, we'd be remiss if we didn't ask you what's the latest on Megadeth.
Yeah, so new album is being recorded, kind of almost fully written. I mean, it's funny. It's one of these albums that sort of we recorded as we're writing it. And we started, we started 2018, got really deep into it last year, 2019. And although we were set to start tracking it back in March, we had to push it back a couple months. We got underway with the basic tracks in May and June. So yeah, I mean, we've got a schedule for it, you know, to come out next year. We've got dates on the calendar, and of course, hopefully the vaccine's working. It kicks in, things open up as scheduled, and then you know, the plan is new music will start to drop around the touring for next year. So the fact, quite honestly, that we had this year sort of the calendar wiped clean wasn't the end of the world, quite honestly, for Megadeth. In fact, in some way, I think it kind of opened up some time for us to you know, dig in and get into the album. Otherwise, we would have been sort of piecemealing it between tour legs. You know, we had the metal tour of the year. You know, all this stuff. So the fact that got pushed back, in a lot of ways, I think it sort of cleared our minds to get the record done.
Okay. Positive guy.
Yeah. Hey, Chad, do you have anything left to ask Dave?
Tons of stuff, but tonight we'll just think about celebrating.
I got a few more. Look, we're here now. So, I mean,
okay. Yeah, definitely. Let's
I'm
talk.
not, you know, yeah.
Well, I read that you've done some like lecturing, right? And I was wondering in which capacity, if we're talking about university or we're talking about, I mean, just talking to you for a half hour, you're clearly a glass half full type of human, and you have a lot of ambition, and you have, you know, just in general, a better outlook than I think majority of people do. So in what cases do you use that skill of yours, lecturing?
Well, you know, it's funny. I guess probably my first experience is funny. Back in like English class, I remember we had to do a book report, you know, and so I brought my bass in, and I can talk about my bass because I didn't even need a script. I could just talk about it all day long because I know everything about it because it's my passion. As I then had to later do book reports in high school and stuff, I found I was very comfortable getting up and just talking like we're doing here, just sort of orating and of course, to talk about a topic you know about and you're passionate about, again, you don't really need a script. You kind of know the answers because it's just part of who you are. Fast forward, you know, another 10, 15 years or whatever, I think probably where I got started was when we started doing clinics, like bass clinics, which were, you know, kind of popular with the music manufacturers. I think the first one I did was actually for Peavey. And then, you know, started doing more with Jackson guitars and Hartley amplifiers and stuff. And that market is largely kind of dried up because usually how that works is a Guitar Center would, you know, put in a big order for, say, a bunch of Jackson basses. Hey, spend $10,000 and you get rock star David Ellefson gets to come in your store. You know, so there's sort of, it's incentivized. And that has largely dried up. So it's funny, in 2018, Tom Hazart and we put together a platform called Bass Story. And it was based on our friend Ryan Downey, who manages Demon Hunter, as well as an industry friend of ours. He called me one day and said, hey, I got a promoter wants to bring you to Australia to do a spoken word tour for my book that I just put out, My Life with Death, my first memoir. And I went, spoken word? Isn't that like, remember that Mike Myers what was that?
His character.
Mike Myers had that one movie, like not Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but like Honey, the
yeah, his mom, the one where he two heads in a double bag. Is that what it is?
something like
yeah.
I remember there's like it starts with spoken word, and he's woman, whoa,
yeah.
Right? He's doing that whole. I'm like that. How am I going to do that? So I thought, well, look, I can get through almost anything if I got my bass with me. So I'm bringing my bass. So I kind of combined a bit of a clinic with like what we're doing here, a little Q&A. And I honestly, I was just making it up as I went. I'm like, well, I said yes, so I'm going. So so I kind of combined a clinic, Q&A, a thing, right? And so Bass Story in 2018 was basically that same thing, except what we decided was let's take it out into the nightclubs. Let's take it out into clubs. Some of maybe a couple of our EMP label group bands go out as the sort of backing band, support band. And then we just toured up into a rock concert. I initially kind of talked, played a couple like MP3 tracks, and then I had the band come up and we finished the night with a bunch of crowd favorites. And ultimately, that's how my Ellefson band formed. One night, I said, hey, I want to play a couple songs. And Tom said, hey, I know the words. So I brought Tom up. And essentially, that's how this whole thing developed into this no cover record. So, it's funny how when you just say yes to things, even if it's going to Australia, to do God knows what, you just kind of make it up and it happens. And Berkeley College has hired me in to do stuff there. And probably my first kind of book thing I did, I wrote a music business, kind of a how-to book called Making Music Your Business back in, published in 1997. I wrote it when we were on the Megadeth Euthanasia tour. And it was just sort of a Cliff Notes version of like, here's what your attorney does, here's what a manager does, here's what a record contract is, blah, blah, blah. Kind of just going through this, everything in kind of a year of my life and a tour album and a tour cycle. And, at that time, there were no music business classes in any colleges.
No YouTube, too.
Nothing, yeah. In fact, I've been told my book is used in a lot of colleges as a go-to manual. Me and Donald Passman, who's a lawyer who wrote a great book on music business. So I got hired in by the Learning Annex up in San Francisco. They brought me up there to do, again, kind of a spoken word. Again, what is this? I don't know. We'll make it up, And it was kind of a Q&A, and it was just, and so I just started, again, kind of talking. And again, I had the book, so I knew all the answers because I'd written it. So it was one of those things where, again, I think when it's a topic you're passionate about, it's a topic you're familiar with. You don't have to sit and fumble through notes. You just can kind of, at least I can, I feel comfortable just kind of going off the cuff, So that's kind of the long answer to your question.
It's a great answer. I'm super curious. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also have a picture in my mind, and I know it's not this at all, but I imagine you walking on stage full with the bass just like strapped around as like the safety comfort. Like I'm going to talk, but if I get caught up, I'm just going to play a riff.
As a professor, it's funny. We did a Megadeth super collider, and I'm like the chemistry professor, right? I go all geeked up. My glass. I look like my dad because my dad kind of had that look, wore like a suit jacket and a tie, and I got the glasses. I'm like, oh my god, I become my dad, And so walking out like that guy, but with a bass. Just
it would not be far fetched to see a college offer a course in basically music of Megadeth for policy students or someone who's like trying to find out about because you guys are so topical on everything from nuclear arms to what's going on. It would make sense to have that as a political science class.
Well, it's funny. You're not far off because at Berkeley College they actually have a Megadeth ensemble, and it is a semester course you can take. And there's a band, there's a group. It's actually one of the deans. His son is a bass player and a huge Megadeth fan, so he basically got the approval to have a whole Megadeth ensemble, where they basically go in and they rip apart songs, how we played them, the theory behind them, and everything. And I took Megadeth over there, Dave, and this was when Chris Adler was playing with us, and the Boston Globe came over and did a story on it. And we're sitting there as like, I mean, we're like The Voice, right? Imagine American Idol. We're sitting there in the college as they're playing Tornado of Souls, and I got up and jumped in and played, and, you know, it's like how to play bass with a pick. And of course, Kiko's dissecting the Marty Friedman solo and the sort of chord changes and the theory behind it, you know? So we're already partway there. So you're right.
Yeah.
If we could bring in sort of the,
I would,
political side of it, we'd have a win.
Oh yeah, if they had a course on nuclear proliferation, you could play Rust in Peace and just break that down song by song on how we got to this place.
Get that over to Harvard, a couple blocks over, and we can...
right. Hey, while we're talking about ensembles, are you and Frank ever going to get together and follow up what you did with Attitudes and Altitudes?
I think so. You know, it's funny, that record was such a labor of love. And again, talk about kind of becoming one voice, the two of us on that record. It's just such a great season of our lives to do that. And we talked about, you know, obviously schedules provided, and this year provided an even greater obstacle of just being able to be together. Because that's a record we do in the room. Me and Frank don't send files around on the internet. And I'm lucky on this No Cover record, we could do that, and it worked really well. But what me and Frank do is not that. It's very much guys in a room with our producer, Jay Rustin, who does the Anthrax records and stuff, and really vibing, you know, with that. So our plan is that at least put up another 1 or 2 songs just kind of randomly as we go. Just put them up digitally. So we don't have to go through the whole undertaking of, I mean, it took us 4 years to get that record out, because we would get together in LA and we would do 3 songs at a time. And, you know, so every, I don't know, 4 or 5 months we'd get together. That's why it took so long to do it. And it's actually kind of astonishing. It has a consistency to it because a record that's recorded over that amount of time sometimes wouldn't, you know, it would be a little broad and the material that was brought in, but somehow we kept it pretty focused.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, listen, we have now taken more of a time than we're listening. We're again thankful.
Then we were contracted aloud.
Yes, I don't want to. I don't know. No, just
taking a note right from the book.
No, I like the sign in the back. Steal like an artist. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
It's funny, you know. Nick Menza's dad, Don Menza, is still with us, and he is a renowned woodwind player. Played first chair with Buddy Rich and Louis Bellson, and you know, Nick would always say that. He goes, man, my dad always said, he goes, you know, great artists never borrow, they steal. And I think it was kind of a jazz adage, you know. The jazz guys had a lot of good ones, like you're only as good as your last gig, you know, those kind of things. So when I saw your little sign back there, I was like, yeah, man. Right.
Yeah, fuck yeah. It's a good book too, if you want to check it out.
Yeah, that looks like a good one. Let me write that one down here.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, the beauty of it is now, I can just I don't even need to write it down. I just go on Amazon, right? When the
there you go.
It'll be here like by midnight, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, listen, guys, everyone, Dave, thank you so much. Everyone out there listening, make sure and check out the Ellefson No Cover record, and actually check out his new book, Rockstar Hitman. It's the first of many coming in that series. And obviously, look forward to the new Megadeth stuff in 2021, and hopefully they'll be back on the road at maybe the end of the year if the world's
look, we've got
aligns.
festivals. We've got festivals for Europe in June.
Oh, geez.
So look, let's hope. Let's hope this vaccine is ambitious, but hey, I hope we do them. You know, and then
absolutely
Metal Tour of the Year with Lamb of God, Trivium, and Flames that kicks off July and August. We just announced Rock in Rio for September next year, so. You know, we're ambitiously optimistic.
Nothing like 800,000 Brazilians going crazy, so that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, coffee company still going, roast in peace and everything?
Yep. Yeah.
All right, guys.
EllefsonCoffeeCo.com is where everybody can order, and in fact, we just rolled out a new roast for Christmas, the Combat Napalm in the Morning.
Oh yeah,
dark roast. It's
perfect.
mostly French with a little Guatemala in it.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, get the kids up. They're going to get up regardless.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, ellefsoncoffeeco.com, and probably if you order now, you probably won't get it for Christmas. You just with shipping. I think tomorrow's kind of the cutoff in order to get it in time for Christmas. But yeah, order it and you'll have it within days. So it's up and running, rocking.
Fantastic. Well, Dave, once again, thank you so much. Have a Merry Christmas.
Likewise.
And we thank you for your time. And hopefully at some point we can do part 2 of this.
Sounds great. Yep.
All right.
There'll be more to report, I'm sure, in a couple of months. You know, early.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyway, hey guys, real quick note, you guys all know that ShipRocked 2021 is now ShipRocked 2022, leaving January 22nd out of Galveston, Texas. So go to shiprocked.com for all the information, details, and reservations for that. On behalf of myself, Justin, and my co-host, Chad, thank you so much. And obviously everyone at Ask for Entertainment, our engineer, Jennifer Zito, our show coordinator, Heather Smith, our producer, Al McManus, and none of this would be possible without the captain, Alan Koenig. So thank you, everyone. Rock hard, vacation harder, and have a very Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
That's a wrap.